Hi everyone, welcome to the Quantum Bridge again. Today we have a really special guest for us. It's Barbara Guth. And we first saw Barbara on with SG Anon. So it's very nice. We contacted her and she agreed to come and have a chat with us as well. So thank you and welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you so much, you guys. I'm really appreciating it. And I love the name of your podcast, being Quantum and all. So it's a real pleasure to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Caspar, what is the agenda and the topic of the day?
Well, I don't know if we'll go as far as agendas, my friend. But,
Yeah, that's strange.
but we'll bounce around. I think with the concept of, if Barbara's all right with this, of why a parallel way of doing things in commerce is so vitally important. And of course, it's not something that's now new to probably many of our audience, actually, will be already invested in some way in different aspects of what certainly we believe to be sort of a parallel way of doing things and taking money out of the traditional system. But before I talk too much about that, because that might not be anything to do with what you see as another way, Barbara, can you give us a quick intro to yourself and maybe lay the foundations for that conversation that we're about to have?
Yeah, thank you, Caspar. Actually, I was in healthcare for a big part of my career, and then I fell into finance. And so I ended up being in venture capital for the last 20 years. And I've just watched how the system doesn't, I mean, it serves in many purposes. Obviously, it's a very successful business sector. It's in the trillions, $4 to $6 trillion, but from one perspective, of course. But what I really saw was how the creators and the inventors were not served. So many war stories about how that model itself, not necessarily the VCs, although, you know, with everything you have good and bad and the ugly in between, right?
Yeah.
But I think so many people were dissatisfied with this venture model, and it never had our creators as a priority. And so I felt that really needed to be addressed just on such a core level. I mean, there are people trying to make adjustments in that sector, but it's always after the fact. And I really wanted to get to the key assumptions, and if we can get to that and what we're actually trying to do, how do we create something that can lead us somewhere where we actually want to go, but that is aligned with creation. And that seems to be catching fire a bit. It's been, I think, a piece that's been missing for a while, that people are really hungry to start experiencing something different like that.
I think that's a lovely intro. And just to say, I mean, not that I know much about the world of venture capital and really corporate finance and so on, but I have bit my toe into that world before. And what I discovered, which may have some resonance for both of you, is that really that model is predicated upon coming across companies and people who are steeped in what I would now call really the old world. They're certainly in no way quantum. And the people that you'll come across that I've seen in that area are often talking about things like EBITDA and about levels of profit and scalability over time. All of these aspects that are based on things where you can say, right, this other company that's sort of similar to us did this. These are our projections. Therefore, maybe you can put some money into this or get involved or whatever. Whereas, and the only reason I mention this is because all of the new technologies, all of the stuff that will be the vanguard of the coming age and what we see as maybe parallel or maybe just taking away from those current structures as they fall away. The key aspect that I found is there's going to have to be a lot of people or enough people who will take a leap of faith with these new paradigms and ideas. So I just wanted to say, Barbara, does that have any resonance for you, the sort of old world model, because I could just be wrong about that, and the aspect of the new world model?
Are you kidding? Yeah, they're night and day apart, because they're a whole different, since we're talking quantum, it's a very different vibratory level of what you're doing. And all those things you mentioned are important, because it's, you know, determining whether things can be viable or not and what needs to happen to ensure that can happen to reach the outcomes that people want in that respect. However, there's a whole other part that's the human part, the heart part, the passion part, the vision part, all of that is not really reflected anywhere in the venture model. And that's what's been so missing. There's no heart. And so in certain respects, it's almost like as I reverse engineered what was given to me, that was downloaded into me around this, how to actually structure this, I realized in the end, it was almost like a return of on an archetypal level of the feminine into finance. So it's almost like that has been completely missing. I mean, birthing, nurturing, supporting, caring for that vision versus how much of a dollar can we make off of it, or a pound, you know? And so it's just a different perspective. It's more inclusive, I would say, much more inclusive to those aspects that are so important. Creation has to be honored first. And so far we've really been good at exploiting it, but we haven't been good at respecting and honoring it and holding it in the place that it needed to be held, and then bring the finance in behind it so that it can be supported and do what it came to do, you know?
Yeah.
Gavin, I've got plenty of things to ask, so if you want to jump in, do.
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned there, Barbara, about the downloads and things. I don't know if you're okay, tell us a little bit more about how you got the ideas. We know that the ideas themselves at the moment are sensitive, so but are you okay talking about how you got those ideas, how those came about?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what gave me so much insight into why all this needed protected, because I was working with a quantum physicist who's bringing profoundly important technology for humanity. He's bringing something that shifts how we engage nature with technology. It's a very different approach that's very much realigning that relationship and that dynamic. And so I had investors that had followed me, and I had this gentleman who wanted to, get financed, and he said there was no way in the world he would ever use a venture capital model. And I thought, well, I get it, but how am I going to do this? So it was really going back to the drawing board, and I've been praying for just under 2 years to actually figure out the way to do this. I couldn't understand why I couldn't put these two worlds together: the sacred and the money, right? And so I happened to be walking on the street on the beach in Australia, and all of a sudden it just like this, something opened. It was this kind of a blissful, grace-like state. And it chokes me up when I think about it. But it came into me, and then it didn't come into me through my mind. That was the thing that was interesting. It came into my awareness more so. So it was much more of I call it a download. I don't know what else to call it, because an inspiration, but it came into me, not through my mind. So, and that was 4 to 5 days and nights. I couldn't stop writing. I couldn't really speak. I was staying with a friend in Australia at that time. And I said, I can't speak. I had to stay in this other realm. It felt like I was in another realm. And it was profound. It was such a sacred thing for me in my life, because I'd always prayed for something like that, to be able to bring, something like that to humanity. And I think so many of us want to be of service and be useful in the big plan, right? And so when that happened, it was a profound thing, and I realized, wow, that experience really, that's a sacred thing. And some people have ideas that just pop in and it's a quick thing, and that's cool, and that's the one type of thing. And then there's this other thing that I had, and then there's other inventors like this physicist who's getting downloads like that all the time, and so for this kind of thing, I really wanted to create something that would honor what that was. And I just think over time that creation, I mean, it's we always look at it in one particular perspective as far as children and things like that. But really, when you brought something through you like that, it's like a child to you, and you want to protect it, and you want it to stay pure and clear and clean, so that the vision and the mission that was being conveyed can be expressed. So that's all of that's so important. Yeah, so it was a big thing. I mean, it just came in day and night for those 4 to 5 days, and then I got after that, and I thought, well, how do I what's this mean? You know, what's this mean in the scheme of things? How does this interplay in the financial sector? You know, the whole milieu of finance, how does it impact, and what are the implications of it? So then I spent years, I mean, this is 7 years I've been working on this since that happened. And so I really spent the time with it and just let it kind of speak to me and reveal itself to me about what this actually is. So it's an honoring that I really wanted to imbibe in the entity itself that I created or was given, but I put it in a particular structure that I was shown. And so when I did that, I was really imbibed with this intention to honor creation, to honor and respect creation. And that's a very different thing than a lot of different financial models, you know. Does that answer your question enough?
Fantastic. I just wondered there, because this term creation comes up a lot, and you know, I feel I'm creative in many ways. I get lots of ideas all the time. Now, whether it should or not, it always does seem that sometimes that requires financing, or you know, you sort of think, well, I shouldn't let that stop me. But you always, basically, how important do you think it is for this financial system to change and shift to actually help with the creative process?
I think it's critical. I think it's critical when you think about it. For any innovation that happens, no matter what the sector, they all pass through the same model, which is the entrepreneurial model of venture capital generally. I mean, some people can get loans, some people don't need it, they can self-finance. But again, there's this huge sector representative of all this money. Sorry for the plane. There's a whole sector that is committed to funds to this sort of thing. And so it's so important. If it's going through that way of doing things, it touches every other sector. So in effect, because it's not with that value system, this is a different value system, and people can choose what they want, you know. But the important thing is to have a choice, you know. And so if people want to choose to bring this in through this different way, it's a different way of honoring. And it opens up a whole other series of events that can transpire. But all the creation that happens really coming forward is going through this sector, this model, with the policy around this model that really takes us way sideways, because all that is about is how much money the investor can receive, you know. And that's important, but you need both, right? You need the creation and the funds to come together to bring this forward. And so far in all of our policy and everything, there's even nothing at all representing the creator or the inventors or the visionaries. And so that needs to change. If we want a new world, you know, we got to change our systems and our structures about how we're doing these things. So it's just, and as I reverse engineered it all, it was just so logical about what transpired. It's like, well, this is an easy fix. Actually, it's a really easy fix from a different intention. Does that make sense?
Yes, I just think it was really the thing that hit home in your other conversation was the part about the wasted wealth within many people who are not getting to express themselves in ways or be as creative, maybe because of these blockages, if you like, or whatever you want to call them, in the financial part. They're just drifting along and enjoy things that they don't enjoy.
Yeah, very much so, because it's, well, again, it's not being incentivized in a way that actually somebody would want to work with. And so, again, it's the model itself that's the problem. It's what it's prioritizing. And so there's so much innovation. Again, a VC firm generally has a game plan about how, you know, what their business model is. So when you're actually using that model, you've got to fulfill their model, their agenda, as well as your own. And their model generally is they want to have a couple of unicorns. That's a really, you know, multi-billion-dollar exit kind of scenario. And so all the other good stuff that's out there that could be coming forward isn't, because none of the energy is directed towards that. It's all towards these couple of things that can make the giant return. And I just think that's a real disservice. That's a real disservice to all the creative capacity that we have with humanity. It's not getting tapped into appropriately. And it, again, because it's a different value system. So I'm really talking about embodying a different value system through this financial platform. So
a couple of things, just jumping in for a moment, that I'd like to raise really are, in fact, Gary's been very good at making me aware of this, even in the process of creating the quantum bridge, and the nurturing aspect, by the way, Barbara, of that as well, that our content providers, i.e. the people that we speak with and have conversations with, we feel very much like that we're holding something that requires nurturing and honouring and so on. And there's also this other aspect within what you're touching on about sort of the venture capital business models and so on, which is very much, you've come to us with this is your idea. Okay, there's 10 of these, 8 of them are going to fail. 1 or 2 of them might become unicorns. Maybe it's only 1 in the end. We write off the other ones, blah, blah, blah. But what we've actually seen in this process, and I've seen it in business before, is that original idea needs room to breathe and to morph and to change. And actually those fairly rigid, I understand why they're rigid, we all do, because there's a system in place that fails a lot but works enough to bring these huge rewards that outweigh the failures. Okay, we understand,
right.
I hope, that structure. But that structure is a really inorganic structure in a time where everything is becoming more organic. And I just wonder, again, if you might build upon what you were saying about that, because I very much think that what we're losing out on is, one, the original creators gradually have less and less in the game, so to speak. So therefore, they're not engaged enough to come up with these new and wonderful changes and machinations around their original idea that might be far better. And at the same time, you have got all of this external pressure of, you told us you were doing this, we expect this by year 2, you haven't hit these targets. And it all just sort of unravels and falls apart, particularly for the creators. So I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and not even for me. I mean, this whole process initially came to me, and then it was 7 years to actually bring it into gestation, because I needed to spend time with it and understand. It kind of just kept revealing, because I reverse engineered initially for all the different stakeholders, family offices, private equity, venture capital, corporations, angel investors, all of that crowd. And so when I realized, I looked at this and I looked at how this could benefit each one of those stakeholders differently, including the environment, by the way, and nature. I realized, wow, this can completely, everyone can win from this. And it shocked me. It's like, wow, if we do this, if we just change our mindset just a little, this changes everything. And people could actually make more money, but actually benefit other things as well, and including nature. Because you're not driving, this endless, insatiable beast, But then when I actually realized, okay, well, what's the biggest thing to overcome? That's mindset, And then I was thinking, well, why don't I actually look at the different sectors that could help incentivize bringing this forward? And as I started looking at these different sectors, it's like, oh my gosh, if we just change how they're looking at things just a little bit too, and then get in alignment with this mindset of how we do finance, with insurance, with peace building, with another stock market, a different kind of stock market. People keep coming at me with different sectors too, and it's like, this changes everything. It just opens up so much more space. And when you can mutually incentivize one another, we're going, instead of off the cliff, into a tyrannical kind of dynamic with 4 or 5 companies really running most of the world. We instead decentralize and rebalance that, and we could be co-creating a whole different world so quickly, with a lot more joy, and a lot more joy and peace in our hearts, and actually having fun co-creating these new alternatives.
Can I just ask something quite tangential, actually? While I'm watching you and while I'm picking up energetically, and again, I may not be getting this exactly right, but I get the sense that you're checking in. I don't know whether that's with your center, that's with other forces of some kind, that's with memory. I'd love to know, because I like this. it's quite delicious in a way, the
Oh,
way
yeah.
that there's this thing going on. Can you speak to that at all?
Funny you picked up on that. Yeah, I'm always tuning up. I'm tuning up. So I'm putting my attention to what wants to get conveyed through me, through God, God's message, because this is an avenue to reach people and talk with people. And so this isn't about me. This is about
This is the good
golden
bit,
age,
Barbara.
his golden age. This is the golden age that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so this is his game plan. I'm just a tool that he's using creators using God to bring this forward along with so many other people.
Yeah.
So I'm very aware of that. So I want to be listening to that higher aspect than just my own mind.
Yeah, I feel the same. The reason that I picked up on it is because I'm checking in that way too. So,
and it's funny, the name of your platform is the Quantum Bridge. It's quite, you wouldn't know this, but the quantum technology that inspired all this is basically a bridge between the quantum realm, the ether, the divine intelligence held in the ether, and the material realm. And that's what he's reconnecting, is that bridge that was broken about 100 years ago. And so that's why it's such a significant thing for humanity, and it needs to be held in that light and understood the magnitude of what it is. And people have to be holding that from the right perspective and realize this is in service to all of humanity and all of life. And so that bridge is a very big theme in the work that inspired why I did this. So it's quite aligned and lovely.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's lovely. I was just thinking, when you were talking about divine intelligence, obviously there's a huge amount of talk about AI at the moment, so artificial intelligence, and I just tend to think that divine all AI seems to me to be is a distorted version of that divine intelligence. Again, I don't know if that has any.
Well, it's artificial.
Yeah.
So
the clue's in the name.
All in the name to me. I mean, there's a place for everything, but if nothing can, I mean, how all of this has transpired and how I've lived this experience of bringing this forward, and the people that are responding are of such a incredible quality of human being, very, very aware, incredibly sophisticated in their life experience and work, and also perspective of things, and how people are coming together. And there's some things that have come out recently that will be coming out that will make this even more prescient. When you understand there's some nefarious intentions out there, and you know, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea, and only God could have known that, really. And so I really trust when I listen, I pray, I meditate, I do all of those things, and I try to put my presence as much with God as.
I was just going to ask you actually about that sort of cleaning of the vessel. Again, we're jumping slightly, but I think it's such an intrinsic part. You know, you talk about business and you think, well, therefore you can't be talking about yourself or spirituality or that link with the higher self or whatever, you know, name is given. But absolutely, the whole point of this is that this is a marrying of all of those aspects, including divine feminine versus this very sort of yang energy that's been forced into business for so long, that ultimately has to fall away to a yielding power, the power of the yin yielding aspect, you know, and whether we're in a different epoch and all of these things are.
Yes.
You know.
Well, I love that you're saying that, because that was the reason I was in New York City, had the Park Avenue office and the whole whatever, and all I knew is I needed to have the mountains, and I needed to be able to. After I was down at Ground Zero during 9/11. I ended up volunteering with the National Guard, and I used to work in surgery in France and spinal surgery. And so when I volunteered, they said, "What can you do?" It's like, "What do you need?" You know, and they said, "Well, what have you done?" I said, "Well, I worked in surgery." They said, "Okay, you're on search and rescue." So I end up clear at the bottom of the pit on the 12th. And so that's when I had the revelation that it was time to get to work. Right. And, but it was interesting because I didn't know what that even meant. You know, I just knew I had to get on it. what was interesting about that is I knew that I had to get out of New York City and I had to go. And I at that time, I was looking at Eastern philosophy because I thought a lot of that is really good at deconstructing the self, right? To purify the vessel.
Yeah.
And so it was really useful for me. So I started with the Buddhist University on contemplative psychotherapy to understand how to break down the structure. So then, and your belief systems and all those sorts of things that keep us separate from God and my identity, various identities that we all have, that get in the way of the divine expression through us. And so I really learned what that was about, to how to deconstruct myself, but it was about purifying the vessel. And then I've worked with teachers all along the way the last 15 years now. So it's really about purifying the vessel, and I'm sure it's not perfect. I screw up all the time. But I seem to catch it more quickly now. I'm more aware of it.
But there is an aspect of it that's perfectly imperfect anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just learned to be compassionate about that, and then I can be more compassionate with other people.
Yeah.
Through this, because I know we're all going through a huge shift. It's huge what's going on right now on this planet. It is a profound moment. And it's so exciting on one level, and there's so much hard time of the transition that's going to be tough. Change is hard. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, one of the reasons I came out now was because I felt things were moving forward in a particular way. And I really wanted people to know that there are people out there, including myself, that are really trying to find another way, another way to do things that can actually pull us through this kind of part to a different kind of reality that we really want to be living in, and it's I just want to be able to provide hope for people. Yeah. And it's actually very logical. I mean, it's really logical. That's the thing. It's just like, okay, well, that makes sense.
I was going to ask, Barbara, do any of the sort of world events and things that we hear of changing in the financial system, we hear a lot about asset-backed currencies. I think some of the US states talking about that you'll be able to use gold and things as money. Mm-hmm. Do these things help, hinder, or have no relevance to what you would like to achieve?
Completely aligned. And it's not contrived value. We're at the end of a fiat system. So there's a certain outcome there when you end a system, and unless you correct it, you're going to go into hyperinflation and end up looking like some really countries that have gone through some really horrific times. And so, that is a really important thing, because my piece is very aligned with that, because inherent value really it can't be manipulated. So that's the key. And so everything that I'm trying to do is reflect the purest way possible inherent value. So it's very much aligned with things you're discussing. Very much. And it's like I'm offering an entrepreneurial piece for that.
I'm surprised you haven't gone as far as mentioning the Stellar Network today, Gary.
The what?
We're talking about really a platform for things like the ISO 20022. So those that are backed by, or potentially backed at least, I don't know how true or not this is, but by things like precious metals. And ultimately, digital assets are going to have to be backed by something, whether that be some form of other actual asset, physical or otherwise, I imagine physical, or the metals, or, you are going to run into, as you've just alluded to, if you're talking about fractional and fiat currencies and so on, ultimately, those are things that can be manipulated. And if we're moving into a beautiful new paradigm, it will require the absolute inability to manipulate the modalities around them.
Critical. And that's, unless a digital currency is asset backed, it's a digital fiat. So that's nothing new. And it can be, you can control a lot of people with a lot of things like that. And that's probably not, I think that's antithetical to what we're talking about. So, yeah, not being able to, I mean, you can, if people want to stay in the casino of various things and play and have a great time, but I wouldn't base my nation's sovereignty and stability on that. And I wouldn't place my international stability and economic
Or
stability.
your own. I mean, the key here is actually those are all external things out there to some degree, when actually I think a lot of us have come on these incredible internal journeys, and part of that internal journey is the marrying of those things, like, you know, the aspect of to get away from the greed aspect, I suppose, but to give some structure and some solidity around, you know, you need to be supported. And we're terrible in the UK generally of not being willing to talk about money and finance. And all that does is ultimately mean that people are very poorly educated about what that actually means and is.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I'm hearing you on that. And there's a lot of things to say around all that, but people do need to be a bit more educated so that they can make wise decisions. And, when you think about the stock market or a casino, none of that is, well, there are controls in place, but certainly not a casino. And, we watch what's going on in the stock market, and it's, I don't know that you would call that a stabilizing effect on various nations or peaceful dynamics for that matter. So you got to get something that's, that can counter that, and you can keep that in place and have a good time over there. But I wouldn't base my stability and peace, like I said, on that. It's illogical. It's just certain things are illogical. So they just need looked at and addressed. It's wow.
I think we're going to have to wrap up pretty much now, but just as a final note, and we might want to jump in on something quickly, but we are almost out of time. A lot of this just appears to be highlighting again this whole aspect that we keep on picking up in the last few months since we started the channel on that inversion. It just feels like really it's just another statement around that inversion, both the natural inversion. I love the way actually that flowers and plants are trying to get in on the act here. That's a lovely thing too.
Well, I really want to protect the natural world with it. Yeah. I mean, I love the natural world, and so I want to.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's great.
I want these beings around me because we're doing this together. We're doing this. Everything. Yeah. I mean, everything I'm doing is to support life. So.
Yeah.
All forms of,
and it's supporting you as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, look, Barbara, I mean, we'd love to have you back sometime. I've really enjoyed, I know, again, I often say this term of we've barely scratched the surface with a guest, but for the first time. But I think that was a lovely introduction to your energy, to what you've been involved in, to saying as much as you can at the moment. And I want to say also to everybody watching that, Barbara has been an absolute joy to communicate with and to come across, and the way you responded to us was another beautiful thing. So really just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to you.
I appreciate that. I'm just so pleased to meet you, and I'm so glad to know you're out there, and I'm so glad to know so many people are out there, because we're going to do this together. I mean, it's not going to be one person. It's not going to be one person. So all of us coming together, I think it's just so helpful, and yeah, it's going to be effective, because again, when you bring a lot of energy together, then you've got the capacity to burst through, right? Agreed. So that you're helping to build that, and I'm really appreciative of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and likewise, we feel very much the same. We just want to hear more and know more about your story and what you're doing. So for another time, Barbara.
Another time, but I'm so pleased. Thank you again for your time. Very appreciative.
You're welcome. Lovely. Thank you.
Right, for us.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and goodbye from the Quantum Bridge.
Okay, take good care. Bye, guys.